All right, Shalom. Call Lord Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to our elders and apostles of Great Millstone who do teach and rule well. Tell us this 100% truth. Peace, love, and salutations unto the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect. You, I came out there pushing his word in truth and sincerity unto those of you who be likened unto the speckled birds gathered to the four corners, speaking in different tongues unto you. We say Shalom. All right, this is Ezekiel 35th chapter. All right, before we get into it, all right, this is going to be a lesson, all right, inspired by this particular thread, okay, and it reads, all right, let me, if I can just go back into it, all right, how slavery continued after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, okay. Now, before we get this, I'm going to get Ezekiel 35 because in my last lesson, all right, I made mention on on potentially doing a series, or like a, multiple parts, just kind of explaining how Esau was able to create the system that he has today, all right, in different, in different ways that he manipulated people, nations, countries, states, laws, so this is kind of like a continuation of some of those points I made, all right? Ezekiel 35, starting verse 1. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it, all right? Mount Seir being synonymous with the place with Esau's resting place, essentially. Mount Seir, Esau. Mount Seir is the ancient biblical name for a mountainous region stretching between Dead Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba in the northwestern region of Edom and southeast of the kingdom of Judah. All right, so when you go into scripture, all right, when you go into the historical landmarks, when you understand how the nations were divided, lands were divided, etc. All right, you will understand that the place called Seir, all right, thought to be near Petra, all right, is Esau's stomping grounds, all right, and today, all right, his Mount Seir, if you will, is America. This is his stomping ground now, all right, which he uses to control the world, all right, well, the elite banking families. All right. And say unto it, verse 3, Thus saith the Lord power, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. All right. So Esau, Edom. All right. Or Mount Seir, however you want to, the same way in scriptures you have, all right, the Israelites, all right, who are so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. When they are spoken of in particular contexts, they are known by the land that they are from. You see? Salakia. So you might have certain instances where they'll be talking about Old Jerusalem. All right? It's not actually talking about Jerusalem. It's talking about Old Jerusalem as in the people of Jerusalem. Okay? Same with here. Behold, O Mount Seir. It's not actually talking about the literal Mount Seir over there still in the land of, where the FJs currently reside, the Israelis, okay? It's not talking about that actual mount, all right? But it's talking about the spiritual Mount Seir, which we know to be synonymous with America, all right? Verse 4, I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Why? Well, here's one of the many reasons. Verse 5, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. All right, so when, certain events were taking place and we were fleeing certain captives, when there were certain things going on, all right, as scripture says, all right, Esau acted like the enemies that were over us. Okay. It says, even thou was as one of them. All right. It's in Obadiah. I don't need the commentary, man. Just give me the verse. All right. This is Obadiah 1. We're going to start at verse 10. Actually, we have to start that before that. Let's see. Verse 8. Shall I not in that day, saith the Lord, even destroy the wise men out of Edom, and understanding out of the mount of Esau? Right? Mountains also represent governments in scriptures. All right. So as you see here, this is another example of the beauty in which scriptures might have been written. Shall I not in that day, saith the Lord, even destroy the wise men out of Edom, and understanding out of the mount of Esau? Esau and Edom are synonymous with each other, you see. So not only will he destroy the wise men out of Edom, but he will also remove understanding out of the mount of Esau. All right, so all of you, man. All right, the whole governing party, the whole establishment, all of you elites. All right, everything that you have done, your pseudosciences, all of it, man, is going to be destroyed. Okay, because in that day, you will be destroyed, along with America will be destroyed. All right. Verse 9, and thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. Exactly. And the Temanites are actually going into the Germans. All right. Which, when you go into the history of the Germans, when you go into Nazi history, communism, all these other things, all right, will make sense why the current state is in the way that it's in. Okay. Because the elite banking families, they operate under that vibration, of the Temanites, all right, which is, when you go into Nazi Germany, what did they have? They had the Ministry of Truth, right, which basically was your whole establishment today, right? You go on Twitter and you say anything about Jewish people, you get banned, you get deleted, you see? And that's a social media platform. That's not even controlled by the government per se, but they're all one and the same. They're all in league with each other. All right. Verse 10, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. You see? And like I said, going off of a point I made in the last lesson I did, this is a beautiful example of how was he able to keep us down on such a low vibration even after slavery was abolished, right? If slavery was abolished, didn't that mean that there were certain things that we can now take advantage of? And no. All right. Deuteronomy 28 says no. All right. So this is a full thread. All right. From African and Black history. It is a Twitter page for African Archives. All right, but it links to different information that you can find, using the algorithm. All right, so how slavery continued after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, a thread. In 1866, a year after the amendment was ratified, Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida, Tennessee, and South Carolina began to lease out convicts for labor. This made the business of arresting black people very lucrative. Thus, hundreds of white men were hired by these states as police officers, all right, which would make sense because when you simply do a Google search of slave patrol badge and you hit images, and there you have it, plantation police, the first one up, runaway slave patrol. Right. Then, of course, they, as population increased, as these amendments were ratified, as they transition all of these things to coincide with a more democratic system, right? Because that's what they're all about, democracy. They changed it from plantation police to what, deputy sheriff, and so on and so forth, right? And as you see here, this was 1858. All right, so with the timeline, this is right on par, okay? Because 1858 was a few years before. All right, so imagine how much more you had slave patrol, police, plantation police, etc. after this amendment. Okay. Okay, here we go. This made the business of arresting black people very lucrative. Thus, hundreds of white men were hired by these states as police officers, and clearly they were lucrative before 1866. All right, so you can see the trend there. Their primary responsibility being to search out and arrest black peoples who were in violation of black codes. All right, and you can research what black codes are. All right, you can do your own research into the different black codes that Esau pushed. All right, but we're just going to get a few key points here that are already provided for us. All right, basically, black codes were a series of laws criminalizing legal activity for black people. All right, so this is how Esau first limited our ability to make any progress even after the amendment. Okay. And always remember, it wasn't just so-called black people. Okay. It was all you so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right. Now you just have to understand, a few hundred years back. All right. We had a bit more of our full color, but as we always use, the analogy with Blake Griffin and his son. All right, Blake Griffin's son. Here we go. All right, so this is Blake Griffin to the left. All right, that's his son to the right. And then we will get Blake Griffin dad. All right, and that is his father. Okay, so if a lineage can go from this to that to this in the span of what, let's say 30 to 40 years, imagine how much more, that would change for us, over hundreds of years. All right. Let's continue. Once arrested, these men, women, and children would be leased to plantations, or they would be leased to work at coal mines or railroad companies. All right, because that was those were the main resources that Esau was using to establish this country. Coal mines and a railroad. All right, and from there, that expansion turned into what? Paved roads, trains, and airplanes, and cars, and et cetera, right? The owners of these businesses would pay the state for every prisoner who worked for them, prison labor, right? And this is where the prison industrial complex, all right, essentially began. Okay, let me pull up prisons can sue the state for not providing enough prisoners. Okay, let's see here. So as you can see, this is the first one. A private prison in Arizona recently sued the state for having a lack of prisoners. For the sake of saving over $16 million in back pay, the state settled by paying the private prison $3 million. Arizona essentially paid the company $3 million because not enough people are committing crimes. You see, this is the devil, man. All right, this is his kingdom. The surprising truth about suing private prisons. All right, and they go into a whole bunch of, legal ramifications about prisoners and federal private prisons, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so you can see, the business for it. All right, just to establish the point. Let's continue to believe that after the passing of the 13th Amendment, more than 800,000 black people or Israelites were part of that system of re-enslavement through the prison system. All right, so that's how that prison system began, because once that amendment was passed, that didn't clearly, give everyone the ability to have or obtain freedom. All right. I'm sure there were some individuals that were in there for more serious offenses, if you will. All right. Let's continue. The 13th Amendment declared that neither slavery nor voluntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. All right, so it's telling you that slavery or involuntary servitude shall not exist within the United States, except as a punishment for crime, which we've went over. All right, lawmakers use this phrase to make petty offenses crimes. When blacks were found guilty of committing these crimes, they were imprisoned and then leased out. And it's the same thing today, right? The petty offenses, you can get arrested for jaywalking, and Edomite probably wouldn't get arrested, but all right. Many of other different examples, where these damn white devils, all right, have imprisoned or incarcerated, a Jake for doing nothing, really just going back to that hatred that he has. All right. So, lawmakers used this phrase to make petty offenses. When blacks were found guilty of committing these crimes, they were imprisoned and then leased out to the same businesses that law slaves after the passing of the 13th Amendment. This system of convict labor is called peonage. The majority of white Southern farmers and business owners hated the 13th Amendment because it took away slave labor. As a way to appease them, the federal government turned a blind eye when Southern states used this clause in the 13th Amendment to establish black codes. Some examples of black codes, again, these can be researched. In Louisiana, it was illegal for a black man to preach to black congregations without special permission in writing from the president of the police. If caught, he would be arrested and fined. All right, and you can look this up. This is how, all right, the church was able to become what it is today, because part of those black codes, all right, there were restrictions. All right, you can't do this unless you do that. All right, and that created essentially it created a standard of living, a standard, operating procedure that must be followed. All right. If he could not pay the fines, which were unbelievably high, he would be forced to work for an individual or go to jail or prison where he will work until his debt was paid off. If a black person, really an Israelite, because there's no such thing as a black person, but if a black person did not have a job, he or she could be arrested and imprisoned on the charge of vagrancy or loitering. You see? So if every single job in that town denied you from working, or let's say there just wasn't any opportunities available, you go right to prison, my boy. In South Carolina, if the parent of a black child was considered vagrant, the judicial system allowed the police and or other government agencies to apprentice the child to an employer. All right, this is what you have today known as your job course. Okay, so you see how they've created all these systems. All right, applied to job corps, free job training, education programs. You see, and guess what? It is the largest free educational and job training program for young adults. We connect you with the skills and education. You see, and what normally, from my experience, all right, most of these job corps were like this. In South Carolina, if the parent of a black child was considered vagrant, the system would take you and put you into that place, So, it just goes to show you, there was one more I wanted to grab. All right. And then the war on drugs and qualified immunity became the preferred tools after civil rights legislation passed as well. The former chattel slave states have the highest incarceration rates today. All right. When chattel slavery was replaced with a prison slavery system, many began referring to black people as criminals. You see, so all it did, it just changed the verbiage. All right. Before, you were a slave. All right. Now there's no such thing as slavery. Now you are a criminal. You see, the United States has the largest prison population in the world and the highest per capita incarceration rate. All right. And of course, this is in response to Tom Cotton. All right. Who is a U.S. Senator from Arkansas. It makes sense. These devils are just racist. But it says we don't have an over-incarceration problem. We have an under-incarceration problem. Okay. So it goes to show, that they're with that same establishment of their forefathers. All right. I'm just trying to see if there was anything else in here that they shared. Nothing important. All right, but it goes to show you, man, these devils. All right, they despise us, man. And that's just the reality of it. That is the condition of the battle. That perpetual hatred. You know, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. All right, so yeah, man, I just found this interesting, man. I was, and, it's the spirit that they would post this today, on Thanksgiving out of all days, to hell with Esau's Thanksgiving, by the way. All right. But nonetheless, I found this very interesting, especially in lieu of the conversation that, was brought up during the last lesson, about how he was able to do certain things. And now you can see, he basically established or laid the framework for keeping us in that servitude through the black codes, And even though white people could do certain things, he made it illegal for a so-called black, Latino, or Native American to do it. And then, of course, if you couldn't find a job, he would just send you to prison. All right. So, it just goes to show you, man, the dude's a damn demon. All right. We need Yahushua to return to render judgment, And this goes to show you what's still happening today. You have your Job Corps, hey, if you can't find a job, there are certain programs and yada, yada, yada. And then if those still don't help, then guess what? Hey, you go to jail. I've seen it plenty of times. I was incarcerated, back when I was in the world. And, I've seen Jake just come to jail just because he was homeless. He couldn't get a job. He can't get this. He can't. So they created a system, whereas before, they forced it, in the manner of, it wasn't as many people today, right? So it's easy to monitor a town of 1,000 people than it is to monitor a town of 5 million, or 300,000. You see, so the only difference is that, back then it was smaller and easier to catch, every single one of you jakes. All right, now, because we're as the sand of the sea and everything's, much bigger compared to that time, Esau can't catch all these jakes, man. All right. So that's why he uses, pseudoscience, witchcraft, manipulation, and magic, and these other things, through his politicians, through his celebrities, through his TV shows, through his institutions, through his learning systems. That's why he pushes that vibration of his order, of his rules, of his all these things. He pushes that through all of the different venues, or systems that he has in place, because there's no possible way to track, 300,000 niggas in a city of 15 million people. You see, so he makes sure that the system, the corporations, the police, the people, all right, that everybody, all right, has been ingrained with how the system works. And this is it. Instead of black codes now they're just laws, state and federal, you see? But before, he laid this groundwork by having these black codes. So that way everybody knows, all the white people know, that they better not break that law because they'll go to jail. But white people, they weren't subject to those immediate repercussions, you see? And now, it's further because, while all these things was going on, what was happening? Esau was being educated. He was going to work. He was creating businesses. He was getting richer at these coal mines and railroad. And then they were being afforded all these opportunities while we were being limited with black codes. All right. And then from there, who knows what what else they were doing to limit us further after that, you see? So, man, Shalak Rayam, to Edom, man, all right? and Dawali Bashim El Shai, Bashim Rakah Kodash, for his grace and mercy, that we are still here today, because his compassions fail not. And Yahweh Shah is going to return soon, man, and render judgment to this damn fucking devil, man, for everything that he's done. So Lord's will use other Father in closing. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to our elders and apostles of Great Millstone who do teach and rule well, tell us 100% truth. Peace, love, and salutations unto the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect, you I came out there pushing his will in truth and sincerity. Unto those of you who be likened unto speckled birds gathered to the four corners, speaking in different tongues, unto you we say shalom.